Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you catch this, or even if you like me sometimes, a night owl. I want to talk about a subject area that's been up for debate for quite some time. You have pros and cons on both sides. You have believers and unbelievers on both sides. And but I think you need to stop making your decisions based on emotions and get some facts. And sadly, that's what most people in society are doing today. They're making decisions based on emotions. I mean, people even get married because of emotion. And I don't know how long I have to tell people or how many times I have to tell people that love isn't a feeling. Love is a decision. But when you make emotional decisions, that same emotional decision will cause you to rethink your decision down the road. But I'm not here to talk about relationships. I just want to talk about an area that's a real sore subject for people. Like I said, you have pros and cons, people for and against on both sides, depending on how you look at it. Because many of us have heard of the Black Panthers, not these clowns that was running around a few years ago, but the original Black Panthers, who were not a militant organization. If you really study their history and what they were all about, you would see it. They were all about improving the Black community, improving homes, improving families, feeding families, and basically protecting the community from outside invaders who had planned on doing blacks wrong. That's what the Black Panther was about. But Huey P. Newton, who was one of the Black Panthers, said that unarmed people are slaves or subject to slavery at any given moment. Now, before I really get into the information, because I'm going to be sharing information from a racial perspective and a historical perspective. I'm going to be showing it also from a governmental perspective. And so I want to share some information from the 20th century alone because for some reason we still don't believe governments are evil. You know, if men are good, if we're good, our governments can't be bad. So if we have a bad government, that means we're a bad society because we elect those people to govern us. And we don't even understand what government, when you break down the root words from the Latin meanings, what they mean. Now, go study that for yourself. But look at the people we have in government positions right now. From I'll go all the way down. I mean, start at your president, and I mean, of course, we don't have any control over who the president is. They selected the president in advance 30, 40 years before uh, you even knew about that person. Y'all think it just happened for the moment. No, they were picked 30 and 40 years in advance. So you ain't voting for nobody president. You might be voting for congressmen and maybe your senators and you heard me say Mike. Uh, but from your president all the way down to your homeowners association people, they wicked. Look at how your homeowners, these people in charge of homeowners associations act. They can't be trusted with power either. I mean, go to one of your local DMVs, go to your tax office, go to your post office, all of these government offices, and look at how evil, wicked, and ignorant these folks are. So the people in these little small offices take on the same behavior of the people in the higher positions. We're not voting for those people in those positions. Well, we're voting for the people in the tax office and things like that at some levels. But they take on the same mentality of the people in these higher government positions. Wicked. And that means they're a mirror image of us because we voted them in. So they are a reflection of people in government positions, political positions, are a reflection of our belief system as a people. So if the people in office are wicked, that means the people who voted them in are wicked. A friend named Maurice shared some information with me that I want to share before I get into my original intent of this video. Because I had actually recorded this video already, and I just had to go through the editing process and all that to get it to where I could translate it to the software and get it properly uploaded uh, for when it was ready to come out. So when Maurice sent me this information, I decided, let me record this over. And the original video was about an hour and 10 minutes long. I think this one's actually going to be a little bit longer, but I don't know. It just depends. But when we talk about gun control, Turkey, the country Turkey, established gun control in 1911. And from 1915 to 1917, they killed 1.5 million people. The former Soviet Union established gun control in 1929 and killed 20 million people over the next 25 years. China established gun control in 1935, and from 1948 to 1952, they killed 20 million people. Germany established gun control in 1938, and from 1939 to 1945, they killed 13 million people. Cambodia established gun control in 1956, and from 1975 to 1977, they killed 1 million people. Guatemala established gun control in 1964, and from 64 to 81, they killed 100,000 people. Uganda established gun control in 1970, and from 71 to 79, they killed 300,000 people. And I know some of you may be saying that some of those incidents took years to happen after the gun control measures were established. Hey, I'm gonna tell you something. These folks have patience like you won't believe. They don't care how long it takes to move their agenda forward, long as their agenda moves forward. You think America just got to where we are today? Or do you think it has been a gradual process over several decades? And some of you may be saying, in the grand scheme of things, with worldwide population numbers, the numbers that I just mentioned are small. Well, when you add up the death by governments with the numbers I just gave you, that comes to about 56 million people in the 20th century. So it's not a small feat. But even if you think it is, look at it this way. Look at your entire family in this country. When you add up everybody in your family that lives in this country, that comes to maybe 200, 300, 500. Some have big families, so let's just say even 1,000 people in your family within this country. Now consider your entire family being wiped out at one time. No history of your family will ever exist at that point. That kind of changes things a little bit, doesn't it? Now, here's something many people probably don't know either. Well, I know many of you don't want to believe anything about this guy anyway, but anything negative about this guy anyway, because he was a smooth operator. But Barack Obama actually gave the rights of the Gulf of Mexico to China while he was in office. And China asked for this information to be kept private until Americans were disarmed, because too many Americans had too many guns for them to try to come in and invade. But see, I'm just a wacky conspiracy theorist who has only spent the last several years of my life studying and researching according to people who get their information from the Communist News Network, Always Been Colored Network, Nothing But Colored Network, Colored Broadcasting System, Many Stupid, National Broadcasting for Colored. I mean, that's where they get their news from. They don't research nothing, but they want to keep telling me I'm wrong. I don't care. My cousin and I were exchanging messages earlier today, and we were just talking about some things. She shared a video with me, and she said, "You know what?" She said, "You're right." And I didn't even know what she was saying I was right about until I watched the video. And we kind of exchanged some messages back and forth. And she said, "Myron, you keep doing what you're doing." And so there's not a lot of things we agree on. But she's told me I've opened her eyes to a lot of things. So that says a whole lot. What we are dealing with today is the same thing we've always been dealing with. However, many blacks are in line with gun control efforts being put forth by their beloved Democrats. You know, down here in Houston, Sheila Jackson Lee was once the congressperson for my area, but they broke it off into two districts, and now Al Green is mine. But Sheila Jackson Lee has proposed a bill, H.R. 127, which is a gun control bill. And black folks are in love with it. Had a white Republican propose the exact same measure, blacks would say that those evil and racist white Republicans are trying to do everything they can to disarm black folks and keep us defenseless. Joe Biden wants gun control, and black folks love it. I mean, he's already got his 1994 crime bill. See, your crime bill was more than sending the black men and women to prison, regardless of how small the offense was. See, it was gun control in there too, but you don't really hear about that. But as a matter of record, while I'm talking about old Joe, this ain't about gun control, but recently, old Joe said no constitutional amendments are absolute. Guess what that means, black people? That means at any given time, old Joe can work to get rid of the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, all the amendments that were put in place for you. I mean, I'm talking serious stuff here. I'm just laughing because sometimes the stuff is funny to me that I keep talking about the same stuff, but all the evidence is in front of you, but you still keep doing the same exact thing. It's like I heard a guy tell a story years ago. He said, if you needed to get to the other side of a wall, he said, how long? He said, and you walked up to the wall, he said, and you started beating your head up against the wall, thinking you're going to push a hole in the wall with your head. He said, how long would you keep hitting your head up against that wall before it started to hurt? He said, and then, and he didn't say it this way, I'm just kind of adding my spin on it. You know, if you're kind of ignorant, I'm not calling you stupid, ignorant means we're not aware of something. If you're kind of ignorant, what if another gentleman walked up to you and say, hey, friend, let me show you a better way to get to the other side of this wall. Don't keep beating your head up against the wall. Come walk over here with me. And that person walks you over and he turns this little round thing in the wall. And it's attached to something called a door. And he says, nah, friend, you can just walk to the other side instead of trying to do it the hard way. See, that's how we are. We still beating our head up against the wall. We bleeding. And we ain't figured out, hey, it's another route. It's another way for us to go. Now, how would it make you feel, black people, if Joe Biden went in full throttle to take away the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments? How would you feel, women, if they went and repealed the 19th Amendment? But you see, we don't think it was old Joe who said if you voted for Republicans, they would put us back in chains as black people. Well, let me tell you something. Republicans never owned slaves. And if Joe has his way, a Democrat is going to openly violate those amendments. You think he was just talking about the Second Amendment when he made that statement? He's telling y'all what they plan on doing, but y'all don't listen. That means your freedom of speech is not protected. And I mean, we see that right now. How long does it take Facebook to scan a post before it allows you to post it now? Look at how they did the social network Parler. I mean, I'm not on Parler, but look how they did them. Facebook actually shut down my original Facebook account. And that same cousin told me, she said, the problem with you, Myron, she said, is you trying to inform people, and Facebook and the system don't want that. So freedom of speech ain't protected if Biden has his way. Your right to protect yourself is not protected if Biden has his way. Your right to privacy is not protected if Biden has his way. Your right to a fair trial is not protected So guess what? You up a creek without a paddle if you let old Joe have his way. I mean, he's the same guy that boasted that his home state of Delaware was a slave state a few years ago. I mean, the dude boasted. And how many of y'all black people went out there and voted for this jackass? I mean, black people, I don't know what to say about it. You hate, the media told you to hate Sun-Kissed Soda so much that you ran out there and voted for your real oppressor. What kind of thinking is that? I mean, I've been told by many black Democrats that I defend Republicans. But these same black Democrats always, always, always defend Democrats. And every last one of them have always told me, well, if Democrats, do something wrong, I'll go against them. Man, tell me when you done voted for a Republican. Well, I ain't never voted for a Republican. Well, shut up. My wife don't like me to use that either. But yeah, you Negroes got me hot and bothered, and not in a good way. You're stupid. You up a creek without a paddle. I'm an outcast in the black community because I don't toe the political line for Democrats. Now, when I started looking at symbolism and understanding symbols and things like that, and I looked at the logo for Democrats, the Democrat logo is a jackass. I mean, I know they say donkey, but what's a donkey? A jackass. Now, I know this would never happen, but I'm going to just throw this out there. If Jesus ran as a Republican and Satan ran as a Democrat, black folks would vote for Satan because that's just how much we love the Democratic Party. But we claim to love Jesus. But I just threw that out there to show you how loyal we are to our abusers, our oppressors, our masters, our slave owners. Because Yeshua would never get involved in politics that way. Now, we always hear about left versus right when it comes to politics. Have you ever read out a Bible that depicts left versus right? And let me pull up a few scriptures. I got a few scriptures for you. That's it. In Matthew 25:33, it says, the goats will be on the left and the sheep will be on the right. And what happened after this? In verse 41, it says, then he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. Who did Christ say he was coming back for? He said he was coming back for the lost sheep of Israel. So if Christ say, depart from me, goats, because I'm coming for the sheep, and the sheep on the right and the goats on the left, I mean, that's how we break up politics, left versus right, ain't it? Left is Democrat, right is Republican, and I'm not saying both are Republican either. I'm not saying they right either. I'm talking. The reason I talk about Democrats the way I do is because that's why our loyalty is as black folks. So you're on the left, and I mean, what else do I found? Because Jesus said he was separating the nations of people. Jesus told Peter to catch the fish on the right side of the boat. That's over in John 21:6. And if you remember when Peter threw that net down in that water, it was so overloaded with fish that did the net break? The net might have broke. I don't remember, but it was overloaded. Ecclesiastes 10:2 says, a wise man's heart inclines him to the right, but a fool's heart to the left. I mean, that's stuff from the Bible, black folks. You know that book y'all claim to love, but y'all only open when y'all do your responsive reading once a week on Sunday. But speaking of sheep, every now and then the system will throw black folks a white sacrificial lamb to shut them up. That's why the lady cop who killed Bob and Jean over in Dallas a little while back was sentenced to prison. And Derek Chauvin is on trial right now. And right now, I think, because I'm a week in advance on recording this before I release it. And I think deliberations are going to be happening all this upcoming week on what's going to be his fate. but his trial is going on right now. The lady who shot Dante Wright was charged with manslaughter. Manslaughter, huh? I mean, manslaughter. I mean, if you can't feel the difference between a taser and a Glock, and the makeup of the two guns are different. Tasers on one side, Glocks on the other side, but you thought you had your taser. Oh, okay, let me move on. But they'll throw you a sacrificial lamb every now and then. But how many other cops go unpunished for similar crimes? But the system's going to prosecute a black cop who does the same thing with the full authority of the court when they engage, especially if the victim is a white. And don't let it be a white female. We're on board with gun control as black people. We're on board with cops being the only ones having weapons. But we are crying and complaining every freaking year about cops killing young black men. And just last year, Breonna Taylor. And then a few years before, Sandra Bland. It seems to be pretty lucrative for the same attorney that just happens to represent all of the families, though. Have you ever really paid attention to these cop shooting incidents? The only talk of serious punishment that ever comes up comes from the black masses only. We never hear the black families of these victims ask for severe punishment. We never hear the attorney ask for severe punishment. But you know what we do here? We hear settlement. Check out all of the settlements that have been rendered, and then check the punishment for the guilty parties and see what you come up with. And guess what that means? Every time we accept settlement over punishment, that means we've given a green light for them to keep killing us as long as they throw money at the atrocity. When we as blacks start rejecting that money and demand full throttle prosecution, then maybe, just maybe, we will see some true justice served in this country. I mean, I'm not going to hold my breath, but I'm just saying. But if we keep taking that money, that says to the system that everything's okay. And all they have to do is find our magic number. Oh, 5 million not enough? What about 10? That's not enough? What was the settlement amount for Breonna Taylor? 27 million? Let me ask a question. Has rioting, marching, protesting, or legislation benefited us at all after all of these years? If you said yes, you're delusional. Has civil rights benefited us? If you said yes, you're delusional. Has getting more black people elected in political positions benefited us? If you said yes, you're delusional. Has having another half-black president since the white Eisenhower left office benefited us? If you said yes, you are delusional. Has having not one, but 2 black attorney generals benefited us? If you said yes, you're still delusional. We currently have a so-called black vice president who legislated with a hammer in California when it came to black people. You think that's going to benefit us? If you think so, you're delusional. Care about her being no soror? That's an emotional thing. Legislation hasn't improved for black people under any of these so-called black elites. More blacks were killed by police under Barack Obama each term than Donald Trump's one term. Obama had 2 terms, Trump had 1. Under one Obama term, 41 blacks got killed by cops. Under another Obama term, 44 or 47 blacks got killed by cops. Under Donald Trump, 19 got killed. But let me get back to what I want to talk about. How do we go from the mindset of a Huey P. Newton to the mindset many of us harbor today? We harbor the mindset of slaves. And the slaves didn't even harbor that mindset. Slaves wanted to be armed, but the system kept them from being armed. I'm gonna give you a list of all of those laws that were put in place to make sure blacks couldn't have weapons. For some reason, we have this mindset that if more gun control laws are passed, crime's gonna slow down. What are you smoking? When was the last time a criminal obeyed the law? Well, when you have criminals creating the laws, I'm not even here to talk about that. But I'm not talking about them, even though they violate them at will too. I'm talking about the ones running the streets. Criminals don't buy guns at stores or from federally licensed gun dealers. They buy them off the street. You can't go in the stores and buy. You can't even go in the store and buy certain types of ammo, but you can buy them illegally off the street. I mean, these guys on the street got the military grade stuff. Where are they getting that stuff from? Someone I know shared with me about the bill in Texas that's up right now that says you shouldn't need a license to carry a gun. Well, why do black folks think we need government permission to do everything? It's because we still had a slave mentality. Criminals are already carrying unlicensed. Unstable people are already carrying unlicensed. But you know what? In Texas, you can already travel a whole state without a license or permit anyway. But they don't tell you that. Do you think if a criminal pulls a gun on you, he's going to wait for you to ask him if he has a license? I tell you what, if someone pulls a gun on my wife or my mother, my sisters, my aunts, my granddaughter, the ladies in my neighborhood, I would hope like here there's a good Samaritan nearby packing some heat. Do you think I'm going to ask that good Samaritan who came to their aid if they have a permit? I don't care if they have a permit. We are still in mental bondage as a people, and we don't even realize it. I know someone who told me personally that they think HR 127 is a great idea. A couple of weeks later, this same person was posting on social media they got a handgun and concealed carry permit. Now, that's a major disconnect, because how you think HR 127 is a great idea, but then you turn around and go get a permit and a handgun? Who is it you don't trust? For some strange reason, criminals always have a need for guns, though, and they always know where to find them. No matter how many guns or how many licenses government make law-abiding people abide by, criminals still gonna do their business regardless. And because criminals, it might have something to do with the power that comes in having a weapon. When you want to force somebody to do something they wouldn't otherwise do if a gun wasn't in their face, back, or their side. Now, all cops aren't bad either. I'm not going to sit here and say that. And I'm not going to even sit here and go with the mentality that I've heard a lot of black people, that cops know who all the bad cops are. No, you really don't, especially if it's a large police force. You don't know that a lot of these guys are bad. But I mean, a lot of them cops profile young men just because they're black, and that's not right, but that's what society has created in the mindset. And I mean, you say cops profile, but if you're not black, you profile us too. Matter of fact, if you black, you profile us even harder. But when you say the cops have a duty, you better check and see what the cops' true duty is. So we say we shouldn't be profiled as blacks, but then we'll turn around and profile and say all cops are dirty and wicked, and that's just not true. I just read about an officer named Gaetano Acera, and he was actually on a call to a home of a teenager who wanted to leave home because he didn't have a bed. He found out once he got to the house that the kid didn't have a bed to sleep on. And he bought the kid a bed, 13-year-old kid. He bought him a bed, he bought him a television, and somebody donated a gaming system to the kid. And when the Officer Sarah gets an opportunity, he stops by the house, and him and the kid plays the game together. And there are actually quite a few stories like this out there, but these type of stories don't sell, and they don't get ratings, so they have to be minimized in order to fuel a racist black-white divide. One of my best buddies is a police officer. I've been knowing him since high school. We were teammates on the football team. He's also a former Marine. Do you think I'm going to throw him under the bus because of things some other cops have done? I went to school with a lot of police officers, the guys that are police officers now. These are good guys. I'm not going to sit there and throw them under the bus just because you got a few bad apples. You got a few bad apples where you work. You got a few bad apples in every profession because it ain't their profession, it's their heart. I even contemplated going to school, going to the police academy myself, but I decided against it. But other than Huey Newton's famous quote that I mentioned earlier about being unarmed, what did some other blacks think about guns? There was a guy named Jonathan P. Jackson who was also a member of the Black Panther Party, and this is something he said. We are quite obviously faced with a need to organize from small defenses to the more flagrant abuses of the system now. Contrary to what history has taught us, Martin Luther King had a house full of guns, but we're not taught that. The nonviolent aspect came from Bayard Rustin. And if you don't know, Bayard Rustin had a lot of white male lovers. And his white buddies felt threatened by black men with guns. So he's the one who promoted the nonviolent approach because he was trying to satisfy his white male lovers. And see, that nonviolent approach came from Gandhi. And but MLK was packing. But if you study your history, Gandhi was racist. Gandhi hated black people. W.E.B. Du Bois wrote after the 1906 Atlanta massacre, if a white mob had stepped on the campus where I live, I would without hesitation have sprayed their guts over the grass. How many of you ever heard of the group It's No Longer Around and Deacons for Defense, not Deacons of Defense, Deacon for Defense? And their president was a guy named Charles Sims. I mean, look these guys up. And Charles Sims and those guys believed in protecting yourself. With, guess what they believed in protecting themselves with? Guns. Here's something Charles Sims said. We decided since we didn't have protection from the law, by the law, we should organize a group to protect our peoples in the neighborhood. And we took up the job of self-defense. We never attacked anyone, but we would defend ourselves against anybody at any time, anywhere, regardless of the price. Now, some of you might have heard me mention before there was a guy named C.O. Chin. I am certain I wrote about C.O. Chin in my book, but hey, what do I know? Available from me at myranjones@gmail.com, Amazon, and Barnes & Noble. Now, you could probably get free shipping depending on your purchase at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, but if you buy it from me, you get it autographed and personalized and pay a small shipping fee. But, you know, I'll put the contact information in the description box. But C.O. Chin believed in protecting freedom movement workers over in Mississippi. And in 1963, he was actually attending a bond hearing for one of the volunteers that had got arrested for a traffic violation. And he actually walked into the courthouse with his pistol strapped on his waist in a holster. During that time, like I said, 1963, that was normal for white guys to do. The law even allowed it. As a matter of fact, the law encouraged it, but black people couldn't do that. You know, with the exception of C.O. Chin. But when C.O. Chin walked in, the judge told him, C.O., you know you can't come in here wearing that gun. And the county they were in was Madison County, and the sheriff's name was Billy Noble. And the sheriff was in the courtroom at the same time. And Chin looked over at him and responded, as long as that SOB over there is wearing his, I'm going to keep mine. Now, all of the white folks respected Chin. Now, I don't know if it was because they just respected him or if they feared him. Or maybe it was both. But What did old Sheriff Billy Noble think about C.O. Chin? Here's what the sheriff said. These ain't my words, these sheriff words. The sheriff Billy Noble said, there are only two bad sons of bitches in this county. Me and that nigga C.O. Chin. But C.O. Chin was there to protect blacks, and guess what other blacks out of the core movement wanted? They had committed themselves to nonviolence, so they wanted C.O. Chin to lay down his guns. And as far as my study goes, Chin never did. So what Chin was saying by not just his words but his actions was, even if you don't plan to fight for yourself, there are those of us out here who will. You familiar with a guy named Robert Williams? Have you ever heard of Negroes with guns? Look and see. Robert Williams had to flee the country because Robert Williams wasn't playing with him either. What does the Bible say about weapons of self-defense? I got a few scriptures for you. Exodus 22:2 says, if anyone catches a thief breaking in and hits him so that he dies, he is not guilty of murder. Jesus said, knock him out. Knock him out. Luke 22:36 says for you to take your money and your backpack, and if you don't have a sword, to sell your coat and buy one. If the Bible didn't want us to be armed, why was Jesus telling them to strap up? Jesus thought it was so important that he said, sell your coat. Get you a weapon. Luke 11:21 says, when a strong man with many weapons guards his own house, the things in his house are safe. Nehemiah 4:17 says, the builders and their helpers had their tools in one hand and a weapon in the other hand. Now also, you'll see if you read around that scripture, you'll see that you also had a group with nothing but tools, and you also had a group with nothing but weapons, and then you had a group that had both. And the group that had tools only were being protected by the dudes with the weapons while they were trying to build a wall. So even if you don't believe in weapons, you need somebody with weapons to help protect you. In 1 Samuel 25:13, it reads, everybody get your swords. That came from King David. Now, that's just a few of them. You know, I've heard some pastors even say we shouldn't own guns. Ironically, these same pastors have security in their church. What they need security for? They're hypocrites. Why does the Bible promote having and using weapons to protect you, your family, and your belongings? But these pastors tell us the Bible doesn't mean what it says. And don't come talking to me about the type of weapon listed in the Bible back then. Everything improves with technology. Do you walk everywhere you go today? Do you ride a camel? Do you ride a donkey? What about sending a message via carrier pigeon? No, you don't do any of those things because technology has improved everything. Would you want to wear some of the clothes they were wearing back then? All you had was some flip-flops. So technology improves. I mean, you want to ride around with a horse pulling a carriage in it? I mean, I know that's all cool and everything for people that get married. And, you know, they do that for their honeymoon and ride down the street and all of that stuff. But that's not how you want to get back and forth to work and back and forth to church and back and forth wherever you need to go. Can you imagine trying to get in a carriage and a horse pull you if you want to go to from one side of the country to the other one? So don't come at me talking about the weapons back then, because all you do is just translate it with the time of the day. I know some of you might go in your Bible and you might know it enough where you can bring up Matthew 26. Now, when Peter pulled his sword out and cut off the man's ear, and Jesus told him to holster that sword. Well, Peter openly carried his sword just like the soldiers during that time. So Jesus knew Peter was strapped. What Jesus was saying to Peter was, don't misuse your weapon or use it in an aggressive manner. Study your Bible. And yeah, Jesus called for us to be peacemakers, which is why he said to turn the other cheek in Matthew 5. He didn't want us to be aggressors, but he didn't want us to be passive either. See, when we're taught turn the other cheek, We're thinking, okay, turn the other cheek. You know what I mean? How many of y'all gonna let somebody bust you in your on the right side of your face, and then you're gonna, once they do that, you're gonna turn and say, okay, now it's time for you to hit me in the left side. How many of you gonna do that? See, Jesus is saying, if they do it, basically try not to engage them. Basically, try to say, hey, try to find a resolution and say, hey, I'm not gonna go there with you. But if need be, you're gonna get these hands. There was a gun control act in 1968, and it was proposed as a way to cut down on crime, but in reality, it was a way of keeping guns out of the hands of black people. It was targeted at sales of cheaper weapons because that's how many blacks were actually buying guns back then, and they wanted to keep them out of the hands of black, especially those that they termed militant groups. I mean, how many of you remember when they used to call black people used to call guns those 32s and all that Saturday night specials? So they just want to keep the weapons out of black people's hands. And although this act sounded good on the surface, like all gun control laws do, it was to make sure poor people couldn't have access to personal protection. Sadly, we're still not able to rely on protection as blacks from the system, especially when the system itself is killing us. Why do you think the Mulford Act was created? Mulford, Mulford Act. It was created because whites felt threatened by black men having guns. Who causes most of your mass shootings? Blacks or whites? Who goes through and destroys nations all around the world? Blacks or whites? Who's the largest rapist in this country? Blacks or whites? Who's the leading serial killers in this country? Blacks or whites? So why is society so scared of the black man? Our kids get shot for playing with toy guns. Our men get shot because an air freshener was supposedly on a rearview mirror, which was apparently illegal. And like I said, the officer thought she had the taser. Taser ain't even made the same way as a gun. I mean, in a general scheme, yeah, but not really. Your taser and your gun, like I said, on separate hips. Our black men get shot for being in their own home instead of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. A black woman gets killed in a hell of gunfire, but a man doesn't get shot even though he was the one doing the shooting. No. To me, that's something that's still fishy about that story. How far back do gun control laws go for blacks? Glad you asked. Let me give you a timeline. Let me get it together. Because I'm going all the way back to 1640, the year 1640. Now, 1640, first group of indentured servants came over on the ship in 1619. They were not slaves, they were indentured servants. Indentured servants would be freed after a period of time, slaves were not. So 1640, Virginia had a law prohibiting Negroes, slave and free, from carrying any type of weapon. It says, all such free mulattoes, Negroes, and Indians shall appear without arms. Go study who the Indians are. That same law would punish a white person who didn't have a gun. 1712 in Virginia. They had a total gun ban law for Negroes only to prevent insurrection. South Carolina, 1712. They had a total black race gun ban, which was an act for the better ordering and governing of Negroes and slaves. Y'all remember I told you about, study the etymology of the word government? And what did you just hear me say again? Governing of Negroes and slaves. See, go study the root of that word govern and meant. Put them together and see what you get. 1791. The Second Amendment was ratified, and then in 1792, blacks were excluded from joining the militia. 1806 in Louisiana, black slaves were banned from even using any firearm. Get this, it was called a complete gun and self-defense ban for slaves. And they would actually follow this up in 1811 with a total ban ownership of guns for slaves just to make sure them Negroes didn't get any funny ideas. Nobody could sell or deliver a gun to a black slave according to this law. 1819 in South Carolina, the law prohibited slaves outside the company of whites or without written permission from their master, which wasn't black, at least not in that year, from using or carrying firearms unless they were hunting or guarding the master's plantation. Florida, 1825, a law was passed and it said white citizen patrols shall enter into all Negro houses and suspected places and search for arms and other offensive or improper weapons and may lawfully seize and take away all such arms, weapons, and ammunition. Section 9 of that bill provided that a slave might carry a firearm under the statute either by means of the weekly renewable license or if in the presence of some white person. 1828 in Florida, they would allow free blacks to carry a gun as long as they got court approval. But in 1831, that law was repealed for blacks only. Delaware, Jim Crow Joe home state. It required free blacks desiring to carry firearms to obtain a license from a justice of the peace. In the legislative session in 1831 in the state of Maryland, they entirely prohibited free blacks from carrying arms. That same year, Virginia, in their 1831 legislative session, they prohibited free blacks from carrying arms. Florida, 1833, a law authorized white citizen patrols to seize arms found in the homes of slaves and free blacks, provided that blacks without a proper explanation for the presence of the firearm be punished without benefit of a judicial tribunal. Now, I'm going to pause on the timeline right there because I just said something right there without benefit of judicial tribunal or tribunal, however you want to say it. There's something called primitive and prehistoric law or prehistoric law. And what that law says, and the law, what you don't know, which is why we don't get justice in this country, that law is still in place in this country right now. And that law says if a white person commits an offense against a white person, the white justice system and the white community are the only ones that can administer justice. If a white person commits an offense against a black person, that law says the white court system and the white community are the only ones that can handle justice. If a black person commits an atrocity against a white person, the system says the white justice system and the white community are the only ones that can render punishment. If a black person commits a crime against a black person, that law says that this white system and white community are the only ones that can administer justice. Black people can never administer justice under this law. So when your black folks go into the court system, they have to abide by this law. I mean, it's not funny, but I'm just telling you, you don't know what you don't know. That's why we don't get no justice. Georgia, 1833. Their law declared that it should not be lawful for any free person of color in this state to own, use, or carry firearms of any description whatever. 1840 in Florida. No slave could own a firearm. Here in the state I was born, Texas, 1840. It prohibited slaves from using guns altogether. North Carolina, 1844, they created a law prohibiting free blacks from carrying firearms on the grounds that they were not citizens. You know, that's kind of amazing because if you go and find an old Webster dictionary, it will tell you that the true American is a copper-colored people. And that's not the Native American people that you think it is. So I just want to make sure you don't get that twisted. I did pull up that definition from Webster's 1828 edition for the definition of American. A native of America, originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans, but now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. You see how Europeans always take and claim something as their own? Now they act like they came over here legally. And they're the biggest objectors to others coming here freely. Many of their ancestors were actually released from the prisons over there in Europe with the understanding they had to come here and never return there. How about y'all go back and get y'all papers and show them to the copper color peoples who the land actually belonged to? How's that make y'all feel? You are the original foreigner. But anyway, back to my timeline. 1845, North Carolina made the sale or delivery of firearms to slaves forbidden. You know, Florida was doing the most considering they weren't even really a slave state. In 1847, they had a law again that said white citizen patrols might search the homes of blacks, both free and slave, and confiscate their weapons. 1848, the Georgia Supreme Court ruled free persons of color have never been recognized here as citizens. They are not entitled to bear arms, vote for members of the legislature, or hold any civil office. 1852 in Mississippi, it forbade ownership of firearms by both free blacks and slaves. And then in 1857, we had the Dred Scott decision. And the Supreme Court ruled that if blacks were recognized as citizens, then they could participate fully. But since they were not recognized as citizens and their rights came from government, they couldn't own guns. Now, see, that's the problem we have as black people. We think the government gives us our rights. The government's supposed to protect your rights that come from God. And we say we believe in God, but we believe in trusting government more than we trust in God. We giving government all of our power. But we say we love God. We say we trust God. We say we have faith in God. So the question is, which God is it? Is it the God with the big G or the God with the little g? Georgia was still at it, and in 1869 it forbade sale or delivery of firearms to slaves. And I mean, Florida and Georgia must have been having a contest or something, since they right next door to each other, to see who can infringe upon blacks the most. Because 1861, here comes Florida again. White citizens and their overreach. And their law said once again that white citizen patrols might search the homes of blacks, both free and slave, and confiscate arms. 1865, Mississippi. They had a statute of 1865 that actually prohibited blacks not in the military service from carrying firearms or any kind of weapons without the special permission of his employer, approved and endorsed by the nearest and most convenient chief of patrol. Did you hear that? You even had to get your boss permission to carry it before you could carry a gun. The Civil War ended on May 26, 1865, and slavery wasn't abolished until December 18, 1865. But man, these states didn't care. State of Alabama said they didn't care because in January 1866, they prohibited blacks to own or carry firearms or other deadly weapons, and prohibited any person to sell, give, or lend. Nobody could even let you borrow a gun, firearms, or ammunition of any description whatsoever to any black. You couldn't even borrow a gun according to that law. 1866, the KKK was formed, and they made attacks upon a whole bunch of black people and white Republicans too. And there were very many instances in the South where the sheriff of the county had preceded the KKK, and he had went through and took away the weapons from the black folks. And this was real notable in a place called Union County, where the entire black population was disarmed by the sheriff a few months under the order of the judge. And then once this information got out, the KKK rode in at night and murdered black people, and they killed all 10 people who were in jail in that county. 1867, the black codes rendered blacks helpless by forbidding them from owning guns. Tennessee, 1870, their first legislative session in which they gained control, white supremacists passed an act to preserve the peace and prevent homicide, which banned the sale of all handguns except the expensive Army and Naval model handgun, which whites already owned or could afford to buy. Blacks couldn't afford them. Blacks didn't have them. You know, they didn't even want the blacks in the military. I mean, You know, you go back and look at World War One. I mean, it's, you know, they did have some fighting during the Civil War, but and that wasn't even about slavery. That was about money. History lied to you again. But in 1875, there was a court decision, the U.S. versus Cruikshank. The Supreme Court ruled that it had no power to stop the KKK from disarming blacks. And during this period, the KKK was actually the largest disarmament group against black people. 1879, state of Tennessee again passed a bill forbidding the sale of pistols. And they ain't talking about nobody but black folks. 1882, Arkansas followed Tennessee's lead by enacting a virtually identical Saturday Night Special law. That's what it was called, banning the sale of any pistols other than expensive Army or Navy model revolvers, as I stated, which most whites already had or could afford. So they disarmed blacks again. 1893, Alabama placed heavy business in transactional taxes on the sale of handguns in an attempt to put handguns out of the reach of blacks and poor whites. See, now we're getting into it now. See, now they're going after the lower class white folks too, according to the system. 1902, state of South Carolina, state banned all pistol sales except the sheriffs and their special deputies. Their special deputies actually happen to be the KKK members. 1907, Texas placed that heavy business and transaction tax on the sale of handguns in an attempt to keep the handguns out of the reach of blacks and poor whites. 1911, in New York, there was something called a Sullivan Law, and it required police permission via a permit issued at their discretion to own a handgun. Minorities were routinely denied permits. 1941, Judge Buford over in Florida admitted that gun laws were passed to disarm black laborers. I think I already mentioned the Gun Control Act of 68. State of Maryland, and I mean, we all the way up, here I am, this one, all the way up to 1988. In the state of Maryland, they had their ban on Saturday night specials. Saturday night specials were considered kind of inexpensive. Guess what group of people were buying Saturday night special? Illinois, 1988. They had a gun ban called Operation Clean Sweep. 1990, state of Virginia had a ban on firearms in public housing. Man, have you seen the conditions in public housing? Crime is high in them places, and they disarming the people, almost like they want them to kill each other. Y'all first black president, according to y'all, Bill Clinton, because he could play the saxophone, introduced H.R. 3838 in 1994 to ban guns in federal public housing, but the House Banking Committee actually rejected it. 2005, Hurricane Katrina. Law enforcement went door to door disarming black citizens before all of that hell broke loose over there. And we saw all of those horror stories of the women and the kids, the female kids being raped when they tried to go in the restroom in the Superdome and all that. And the men, the law-abiding men, were defenseless because the criminals had weapons. How can blacks be, and I'm through with the timeline. I'm just going to talk now and close out. I'm sounding like a preacher now. I'm almost through, y'all. But how can blacks be in support of gun control? Any gun control legislation after all of these instances I've presented to you? It just doesn't make sense to a person with common sense. Why we are always in favor of laws that restrict our rights and freedoms as a people. We have complained for years and years about slavery and rights restrictions. But as soon as we have the opportunity to have our rights, we do everything in our power to give those rights to the government. I mean, I guess it goes to something I heard once before. And that was that we as blacks, we hate our oppressor, but we love our oppression. And, I've translated that once before. And I said, We don't like to be micromanaged, but we still like to be managed by the system. We don't like to be micromanaged by the system, but we still like to be managed by the system. We continue to beg the government to make us sitting ducks in the face of criminals. If our rights come from God with a big G, why do we need government permission to fish, hunt, get married, get a divorce, have kids? Yeah, even have kids. I can't think. It's a law. It's like 3 or 4 laws on the book that says your kids not even your property. Your kids are the property of the government. And like I said, I can't think of the 4 laws, the 4 court cases right now, but it's at least 4 or 5 of them out there, something like that. So you need permission to have kids. Over in China, they were. I don't know if they still do it, but at one point they told you how many kids you could have. If a woman got pregnant again, she had to abort it. Oh, we as black people, we volunteer to do it. We help the system out and don't even realize it. We need government permission to travel to another country. That used to not even be a thing. That wasn't even a thing up until 1945, I believe. You didn't need no passport to travel, but it became another lucrative business venture for the government. Why do we need permission from the government to collect rainwater? The rain comes from
We've
God.
implemented the strictest measures.
I don't know where that came from, but God is opening up the windows of heaven and providing us rain, and the government say we can't catch that free stuff. We need government permission. If we have a gas container, it has to fit certain parameters according to the government specifications. If you go to a gas station with an unapproved government container, the person in the gas station booth by law has the right to shut the gas off to you because you're not abiding by what the government put in place. Who gave the government the right to force us to send our kids to those schools we call public schools? Government sold us on the idea. The idea came from John Rockefeller. It's amazing. John Rockefeller is the one behind the oil. Amazing. John Rockefeller is the one that created the pharmaceutical industry. Amazing. John Rockefeller is the one that also owned the American Medical Association. So he was influencing the government with his money. Why do our young men have to register for the military at age 18? And it's not just black, all young men are supposed to register for the military at age 18 or face any jail time if they don't. But you got some people out there that got religious exemptions where their young men don't have to register for nothing because they don't believe in it. See, you've never heard or read about wars in the Old Testament, but you never read about no wars in the New Testament. Oh yeah, it said in those days there will be wars and rumors of wars, but you never saw any wars taking place. But in spite of that, Jesus still said to arm yourself. Who gave the government the right to control our rights? Let me reiterate this one again. Romans 13. That has been so badly translated and taught. Higher powers do not mean government authorities. Your modern Bible say government authorities or governing authorities. The old Bible says higher powers. And if you understand who Paul was talking to and writing to at the time, you'll understand what he meant by higher powers. There wasn't no governing authorities. But these preachers up in the pulpit still promoting and telling us to subject ourselves to the government. They talk out both sides of their mouth because on one side they say, you listen to God. Then on the other side of the mouth they say, you listen to government. Let me tell you something. God's way and the government way can't coexist. You better figure that out. Because there ain't nothing godly in our government. Nothing. And I remember when an organization was trying to get me to run for political office a few years back. I had no intent on being a lifetime politician, but that's what they wanted because they said I didn't have enough name recognition. They wanted me to get started and run for a position on city council. And then they wanted me to maybe stay there for a couple of terms and then maybe run for mayor. And then stay there for a couple of terms and then run for Congress or Senate. Man, look at here. My life is more valuable to me than that. I said, I either run for Congress or I don't run for nothing. I said, but I got to do my homework first. And after I did my homework, I said, man, ain't no way I'm going into that organization. They told me, well, Brother Myron, we need more people with a godly influence in positions of politics. I said, yeah. I said, all them people with godly backing and background and upbringing that's winning into politics. I say, how has that worked out for us as a citizenry? I said, they get in there, I said, and they get minimized. I said, and if they don't get with the program, they serve one term and they're gone. The only ones that last are the ones that get with the program, regardless of what they say publicly about objecting. You ain't gonna have no godly influence in the American United States government. None. You better have some godly influence in your home. And you better have your kids and your wife knowing where God stands on issues. So when these people come on TV speaking, and you should be able to recognize, your kids should be able to automatically recognize, hey, what they're talking about ain't godly. I mean, we got society out here telling us that certain things are normal and natural. I don't even get that. I mean, do what you want to do. That's your business. But don't keep pushing it or trying to push it on me, because if you keep trying to push it on me, I'm gonna push back. That's just my nature. I'm gonna push back. See, they don't tell us about how men involved in certain situations because of their sexual behavior are walking around with diapers on. And it's not because of prostate issues. But I'm not going to get on that because that's not what my topic is about. But why are we so willing to give up our rights? Think back to all those race riots of the 20th century against black folks, where the black folks were either unarmed, disarmed, or outgunned by white folks. I mean, the KKK was actually still walking the streets when I was growing up as a kid in the 70s. They called them peaceful demonstrations and peaceful marches. But they walking down public streets, parades. Don't you think in light of these incidents that took place with all of these race riots, there's no black people wasn't going committing race riots against white people. White people was doing that against black people. But we keep getting painted as the enemy of societies all around this world, especially here in America. We get painted as the enemy. White people outpacing us on everything. White men outpacing us on everything, damaging, degrading, and violent in this country. But we get painted as the threat. I've always been, well, I wasn't big in high school, but I've always been tall. And, they put some weight on me as soon as I got to college. Then I became big and tall. Like that men size in the school, big and tall. I mean, there are targets on us, especially when we're big and tall black men. We have a bigger target. We're seen as a greater threat than everybody else. We're seen as the beast. We're seen as animals. But don't you think with all those race riots that took place, black folks should have at least been able to have a fair chance of being able to fight back and defend themselves, and our casualty rates might not have been as high back then? Or are you still sitting around here waiting on the government to keep us safe? Who is going to come to our defense when we get in a bind in this country? Nobody stands with us long term on anything. Nobody. If they stand with us many times, it's so they can appear as our friend, and then they're going to turn around and ask us to help them with their agenda. And as soon as we help them with their agenda, they're going to drop us like a hot potato. Darker skinned people always suffer the most under gun control laws in this country. Now, as a side note, with everything that's been going on in Minnesota, guess what was protected? Every establishment in that area that had armed citizens standing in front of them was left untouched. Why is that? Amazing how that works, ain't it? But the bigger question is, why are people destroying businesses? Those business owners didn't shoot anybody. Those business owners are not the police. So why are those ignorant folks attacking and destroying the livelihoods of those people and all of the people who work there? Them people not going to go back to work no time soon. What did I say earlier about punishment and settlement? Y'all out here acting ignorant, and the attorney and the families are getting paid. But you destroy the opportunity for other people to provide for their families. What kind of sense does that make? If you get caught, you're going to jail. But them other folks who are not riding gonna cash in. They're not gonna come to your defense and say, well, they were fighting and riding and protesting and marching on our behalf. They gonna sit in their houses, they big houses that they gonna go buy after they get their settlement, and say, well, ain't nobody tell them go out there and do that. So you're ignorant. Out here acting ignorant. The best place for you to be when stuff like this happens is in your own house. Don't get caught up in that stuff. Robbers and home invasions are not the same thing. Robbers tend to happen with most people at work and school because these people want items that they can turn over for quick cash. However, home invasions, a different thing. They actually happen when people at home because they believe you really have something valuable that may be locked away somewhere and they need access to it. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, they actually reported over 1 million home invasions across the country. Now, I don't know what type of time frame that is, but that's just something I read one time, way too long ago. But and of those 1 million home invasions, 250,000 of them resulted in the homeowner suffering violence at the hands of the attacker. Now, think about this. If someone is doing home invasion, that's not a random attack. They've been conducting surveillance on you and your family while you go about your day oblivious to your surroundings. And sadly, that has become a lot easier with most people because their face is implanted in their cell phone as they move throughout the day. So if they watch you and they still plan to attack you in your home, they believe you have something more valuable than your life is worth to them. We can be honest. If someone breaks into your home while you and your family are watching TV, having dinner, even while you're asleep, do you want to rely on a baseball bat for protection? I mean, can you imagine being woken up in the middle of the night by a loud noise, door being kicked in, window being broken, anything, alarm going off? You want to sit around and try to defend him with a bat? Because if they coming in while you there, they not coming in with no bat. They not coming in with no knife. They coming in strapped. According to statistics, they did a study on police response time around the country. And the fastest police response time is 5 minutes and 46 seconds. And that's over in the city of San Francisco. And Texas had 3 or 4 cities, and I know Houston was ranked number 2 right behind San Francisco at 5 minutes and 51 seconds. I mean, I don't know who they surveyed over there because I've mentioned to you about the 2 instances where my neighbor's alarm went off. And first time they never showed, and the second time it was 4 hours. So I guess it's certain areas they checking these response times in because they ain't check with nobody over here. But Fort Worth rounded out the top 10 at right under 10 minutes for response time. Now, I've seen many stories of people who were home when someone entered, and those that survived said it seemed like forever before police arrived, when in reality, most of the incidents were happening in less than 5 minutes because the guys know the police are coming, so they're trying to get in and out, force you to do something. Some folks were already gone by the time the police arrived, and that's just something to think about. But think about this too. What if your home is invaded by a group of intruders at the same time? Your chance of survival decreases greatly when something like that happens because there's always a hothead in the group who wants to prove something to the rest of the group. While the media is around here fear mongering all over the place about how deadly a virus is, they overlook something that they seem to always share with us on a nightly basis. And I mean, I remember talking about stop watching the news. The only difference between the 6 o'clock news and the 10 o'clock news is two more people got killed in those 4 hours. But I'm certain they wasn't reporting these stats on purpose so they could have us all focused on the virus. And amazingly, for several months leading up to the election, they stopped talking about the virus. Because now they want to focus on getting that evil Mr. Trump out of office. But it's almost like crime disappeared in 2020 because they were only reporting everything that was related to pneumonia. Did I say pneumonia? The reason I said pneumonia is because the World Health Organization said on January 20th of 2020 that they had come across a new pneumonia strain. But then at the end of January, they called it Kenneth Copeland remix. 19. But you know what else happened in 2020? Homicides increased by 30% across the whole nation. Now, the reason the experts gave for it is because so much attention was given to the virus that police officers were put on virus duty instead of policing. Now, possible, because how many of you, I've driven by a lot of the testing locations and seen a lot of police officer vehicles, cruisers in the parking lots. They said homicide rates were higher in every month of the year in 2020 than they were in 2019, but June was really bad. And they attributed that to the George Floyd situation. Okay. What happened to the other 11 months? So if homicides are increasing and police on virus duty, our chance of being hurt in a home invasion actually increases. So what you gonna do? You're gonna go call for more and more gun control and leave yourself out to dry? My grandmother, my mother's mother, is passed on now, and we really had a close relationship. When I was about 4 years old, my grandmother showed me her handgun that she kept under her pillow every night. Every time my grandmother traveled, she had a pistol with her. And I actually lived with my grandmother for a little while right before I got married. And late one night, there was a loud noise in the house. I mean, loud. I immediately jumped up to find the source of the sound. And what had happened, something had actually fallen on the floor in one of the bathrooms. And when I turned around after walking through the house and was coming back to the bedroom, guess what I saw? My grandmother with her pistol. And she wasn't afraid to use it. But at age 4, when she showed me that gun, I knew I better not ever put my hands on it because it was dangerous. And the reason I said that is because here recently I saw where a 3-year-old got a hold to a gun and shot an 8-month-old sibling or something like that. I mean, sad situation. But why did a 3-year-old have access to the gun? And see, things like this make more of us call for gun control. No, you need some discipline in your house. Gun control don't fix discipline. You fix discipline. That 3-year-old should have never been able to touch a gun. My grandmother showed me that gun, but she never let me hold it. My grandfather had plenty of guns. And he, my dad, and my uncle taught all of the boys in the family how to shoot them. I took ROTC in high school. And guess what they taught us? They taught us how to shoot a rifle. So the gun ain't the problem. The individual is the problem. You know, it's a guy I know over in New Orleans, black guy, has his own gun shooting range and teaches classes and all of that stuff. I'm happy for it. But we need to understand what happens when we're left defenseless. I mean, how many more examples do you need other than all of them I gave? Yeah, I talked about all of the race riots in my book, but hey, what do I know? I talked about every last one of them that happened in the 20th century. Blacks, unarmed, disarmed, defenseless, which meant unprotected. Dick Rowland, the young man that they tried to say molested the young lady Sarah in an elevator over in Tulsa. Sarah never pressed charges. Dick never touched her. But that was the excuse for starting the race riots to destroy what black people had built over there. White people. And I told you on the last video, I don't care what color you are, I'm going to stand with righteousness. I don't care if you unrighteous and you black, I ain't got nothing for you. I can't do nothing for you. I don't even want you around me. If you're unrighteous and you're white, I don't want you around me. But if you're righteous and you're white, we can be friends. If you're righteous and you're black, we can be friends. If you're righteous and you're Hispanic, we can be friends. I want y'all around me. But see, that's evil people trying to put gun control measures back in place. You think these white folks gonna abide by gun control laws? These white folks been stacking weapons for years. We around here 1, 2 guns for those people that have them. And these dudes around here with 15 guns, 30 guns. I know a white dude have about 160 guns. You around here talking about gun control. And now you got 3D printers. These white boys out here printing up their own guns. These white boys out here building their own ghost guns. They just ordering parts. So there's no serial number. So the FBI can't track those guns. And we around here going to voluntarily give ours up as a people? So guess who's going to be the sitting ducks again? Us. These white boys ain't giving up their guns. And as I stated, AR does not stand for assault rifle. That's actually the name of the company that created the gun originally. But we around here want to do some little 5 capacity 38s. You know, some of y'all might have Glocks that hold 17 rounds in the chamber, whatever. And by the way, gun control, if Joe Biden and Sheila Jackson, we get that way, your Glock gonna be illegal because they said anything over 10 rounds gonna be illegal. So while you're around here calling for a ban on assault weapons, if according to their bills, if it goes forward, your weapon that holds more than 10 rounds is considered an assault weapon. How you like that? But we around here with our 5-shot 38, maybe, like I said, maybe a 15 or 17 round Glock. Some of you might have a 6-round 357, 7 or 8 round 45, 10, 12 round 40 caliber, a 5-shot shotgun. These white boys around here got 3, 4, and 5 rifles, 30 capacity magazines. Y'all think y'all doing something? They're not giving up them guns. Like I said, they printing them and they building them. These guns ain't on record. What's wrong with y'all? But I'm the crazy one. But whew, I've been talking for an hour, almost an hour and a half. Guess I'll shut up. But if you found some value in what I said, if you have some friends and family members who might be on the fence, you know, I think this information I just presented in this video is just basic common sense stuff, but most people are not having that presented to them that way. All they're being presented with is the emotional stuff. Like I made a post on social media not too long ago, and I talk about being blind by not seeing gun control for what it really is. And I said, you're not thinking. And somebody's going to respond to me, I can't believe that you had the audacity to say that people who've lost their kids to gun violence are blind. And I had to respond, and I said, well, based on that comment, it tells me you really didn't understand what I posted, because I don't remember exactly what I posted. And, you know, especially at the time I posted it. I said, you know, you missed everything that this post said, because I don't even see how that response was generated from my post. And I had to read my post several more times to try to understand if I came from an opposition position, would I have garnered the same response? And the answer was no. I'm not talking about the parents who've lost their kids to gun violence, but I already told you. I mean, yeah, they're troubled when they lost, but it almost seemed like sometimes, you know, like I said, they're looking for the payday. And the family member that got killed was just a sacrificial lamb to their payday. And I know some people don't say, "Oh, that's just hardcore." Hey, man, it's reality. Get off your high horse. That's reality. I've told you about other incidents where people have done different things for money. So, what the cop get sentenced for down over in Dallas for Botham Jean? What, you got 5 years? I could be wrong. I don't really follow that stuff because it's troubling to my spirit. I mean, I'll catch some of the surface information, but I try not to get involved in that stuff. I know what I do see. Like I said, Breonna Taylor family, 27 million. Her family hit the lottery at her expense. Money cannot fix the injustice of what they're doing to us. We need to see some punishment instead of settlement. We need to get our heads screwed on right when it comes to self-defense and protection. Because while we're around here always wanting to abide by the law when the law tells us to abide by it, these other folks saying, man, the hell with that. I mean, you've seen some of these guys say, I wish like hell the government would come try to take my gun. We're going out in a blaze of fire. And how many incidents have we seen historically where these guys have went out in a blaze of fire because they wasn't going to be taken alive? So if these folks are making sure they're protected and they're protecting themselves, putting themselves in a position to stop government overreach, why are we sitting around here begging for the government to make us defenseless? 56 million people that we know of killed by governments in the 20th century. All the blacks that were killed or misplaced in the 20th century from race riots. Like I said, I mentioned all of them in the book. All those laws that were put on the books during the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, 1900s to make sure blacks didn't own weapons, and we around here begging for more gun control. I mean, something wrong with us. But it's hour and a half, 20 seconds. So I'll go ahead and stop here. And if you find some value, share with some friends, share with some family members, and talk to you in 2 weeks.